Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
Today, we're both very excited to be talking to you about the film Lady Bird. Do you have a synopsis for us, Mr. Huddleston?
I do. So Lady Bird is a 2017 film. It was directed by Greta Gerwig of now Barbie fame. And the synopsis from Rotten Tomatoes is a teenager, Saoirse Ronan, navigates a loving but turbulent relationship with her strong-willed mother, Laurie Metcalf, over the course of an eventful and poignant senior year of high school. And it also stars Timothée Chalamet, Lucas Hedges, Tracy Letts, and others. All right, so I think you said you'd seen this before, right?
Nope.
Oh, you hadn't? Okay, so it was first time watch for both of us. Okay, so what did you think?
You go. I always go first. You
Me
go first.
Okay. So I guess spoiler alert, I liked this quite a bit.
I hated this film.
I hated it. It was terrible. I guess this is the only movie that I have seen that Greta Gerwig directed. I think the other ones, in addition to Barbie, she also directed an adaptation of Little Women, which I haven't seen. In some ways, it's kind of a standard coming of age film. But I think what set this apart from your typical coming of age film is how well written the characters are. I mean, everybody in this, because some of these characters could have been pretty one-dimensional or two-dimensional, but they feel, even I was thinking down to, so Saoirse Ronan's character Lady Bird, which is what she wants to be called throughout the movie, attends this Catholic school. And I was thinking, even like nuns a lot of times in movies are sort of a punchline, but even the nuns felt like real humans. You know what I mean? Because there's a one older nun who's sort of like the advisor or guidance counselor, and talking to her about, because the kind of the main thrust of the movie is she lives in Sacramento, and I wonder if this was somewhat semi-autobiographical, because in just kind of reading a little bit, Greta Gerwig is from Sacramento, so I wonder if this is kind of about her. But so Lady Bird, they live in Sacramento, but she wants to go to school on the East Coast, which is this constant friction between her and her mother, because she just says we can't afford it. So there are some scenes with her meeting with this nun who's the guidance counselor, and talking to her about getting. And I thought even those were written in such a way that they felt like real people. The Laurie Metcalf, I didn't even realize. So I would imagine most people know her best from Roseanne. And for the first 10 or so minutes of this movie, I didn't even realize it was her. I was like, wow, that's Laurie Metcalf. And everybody's great. She's great. And she's not a villain, but the main area of friction is between Lady Bird and her mom. And having never been a mother or a daughter, I only know about this from conversations, with women. But I think this is pretty common that mothers and daughters butt heads a lot. But the relationship between them is really interesting. The father, who what did they say his name is? Tracy Letts. He's this character actor that you'll see pop up in movies, and I always think is great. And it's sort of like the mom is the bad guy and the dad is the good guy, and you find out at one point in the film that he has lost his job and he's suffered from depression for years. So I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, but Saoirse Ronan she's just fantastic, and obviously has gone on to be a star. But even the small, characters in this are so well written, and that's what I think I liked. And you have early role from Timothée Chalamet, who he doesn't have a big part in the film, but obviously he's an A-list actor now. So I don't know. I've rambled for a while. What about you?
I agree. I agree with everything you've said. I think I saw an article that was sort of like, is Lady Bird autobiographical? And then I didn't really read it. The first line was like, no, but I had the same thought because it's so specific and it
Mm-hmm.
feels so true. And, I thought only someone who, kept notes as they were going through their senior year of high school would be able to draw on the specificity of these universal moments. But there's just something so grounded and so true feeling about all of it. Saoirse Ronan is amazing. I mean, she's really, really carries the film. I agree with you. Everybody does a great job. Laurie Metcalf is what I loved about the portrayal of the character of the mother was that in addition to the difficulty, which, is very clearly drawn, there's a ton of love there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it isn't sort of one of these after school specials where there's an evil stepmother or something like that. It's her mother, and she clearly loves her mother. Like the
Mm-hmm.
two of them clearly love each other, but the teenager feels like her parent doesn't understand her. And the dad does frequently. He's like, she'll come around or give her time. This is hard for her.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really get into the psychoanalysis of anything, but, she does at one point say, well, my mother was an abusive alcoholic.
Yeah.
Laurie, the mother character says that. So you get little, well, that's a pretty big breadcrumb, but they don't have a scene where it's like, unpacks all of that. But mom's doing her best, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dad's lost his job. There's a lot of neighbors and all the other people who managed to do well financially in their lives all around them, live in bigger houses, and they didn't want to be still in that house. They had hoped to, buy up a bigger house, but things didn't work out that way. And Lady Bird at one point sort of pretends to live in a different place, her sort of dream house on another street that they pass on their way to school. She tells, so there's the popular kids and the popular girls' parents have a lot of money, and it all just feels very true.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about little minutia like this as examples, but the point of it really does feel like being there again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did not really enjoy high school. People are like, those are the best years of my life. I'm like,
No.
not me.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, not that it was all miserable. I had a good
No.
time in high school. It just wasn't like if you're looking back and you're thinking, my senior year of high school was the best year of my life, and I'm 50. You're kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm so sorry.
Those people that peaked in high school. Yeah, I was the same way. I didn't have a miserable experience in high school. It was fine, but yeah, I wouldn't want to go back and repeat that. And it's always been funny to me how many, like how many movies there are about prom.
Hmm.
And I just think like the prom was fine, but even as a kid, I was just kind of like, is this it? Like people, you know what I mean? It's like I certainly do not look back and think like, oh, my senior prom was one of the seminal events of my life.
Right.
I mean, that they make all these movies about it. Yeah, and something that I thought was interesting about this again in the three-dimensional portrayal of the characters is there aren't any really villains in this. One of the now this is kind of a dramedy movie, but one of the big tropes of the 80s is the rich, the mean rich kid. And even with this, even you know the semi-mean kids aren't all that mean, you know. I mean, they're pretty human. There aren't any, you know, there are some parts where kids are kind of mean to each other, but for the most part, they treat each other reasonably well,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I do. And I think it does. There are familiar tropes and characters, right? The nuns. So she ends up going to prom with her best friend, and the two of them sort of end up dancing together. And there's at least one shot of one nun looking sort of disapproving,
Yeah.
keeping a close eye on that. But the nuns aren't monsters. And, you know, that's something you see again and again. They're people. Everyone's people. The rich,
And I went
you
to,
know.
not to interrupt you, but I went to, it wasn't high school, but it was elementary school. I went to a school run by nuns. It was the monastery, you know, they lived there. And
Yeah.
as kids, we were a little scared of them. And, uh, you know, they seemed sort of alien to us, just as, I mean, your teachers in general do when you're a kid. But then my sister went to the same school and was 6 years younger than me. And I would go back sometimes to, you know, to pick, once I was driving to, you know, pick my sister up or whatever. And, you know, you saw the nuns as much more human than you did when you were 10 or 12 years old or whatever, you know. So yeah, like I said, nuns are often punchlines in movies, or they're scary, evil characters.
And at the end of the film, I mean, she spends most of the time hoping to get into an East Coast college. And I think she ends up getting into NYU, doesn't she? She gets financial aid.
I think it was NYU, yeah.
And so at any rate, there's a whole scene about going to the airport, and that unfolds with some drama with mom. But then we get to see her in New York. So she gets what she's been yearning for. And it doesn't. What I love about it is frequently we see that played one of two ways. We either see like it's the happy ending where the character gets to New York City and it's everything they ever dreamed, and they finally come into their own, and this is it, and now cue the up-tempo music and the rest of your life begins. Or made a horrible mistake, and oh, you stupid rube, you know, why did you think that moving to a place like New York City was going to solve everything for you? It's a dog eat dog world, and it's the opposite, right? It's crushing.
Mm-hmm.
And like every other, you know, familiar feeling moment in this movie, Greta Gerwig does I think the really smart and thought-provoking and true choice of it's somewhere in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's what she wanted and expected in some ways, and it's not what she wanted and expected in other ways. And we don't get that long of her in New York. Like, she goes to a party and she meets a guy, and we see it playing out with her that this is not what I expected. Again, and just moment to moment, you know, there
Mm-hmm.
aren't big, sweeping, life-changing things. It's just how life is like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and what the whole movie makes me think about is how we end up looking back on these seminal times in our lives and sort of cherry pick the parts of it that we choose and want to remember, for better or for worse,
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of makes a cleaner narrative. It makes an easier story to relate, right? And that's how these sort of cliches, coming of age cliches, get built. Is it's just easier to remember as that was a terrible time, or oh, that was an
Mm-hmm.
amazing time. But if you really get into the details of it, you're like, well, there was a lot of both going on, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of confusion and fear and excitement about a variety of different things that maybe aren't as easy to explain or relate. Things, I mean, at my age, I'm already starting to forget. People are like, oh, remember we did that thing? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot that we did that.
Yeah.
Well, nope, never been there. Like we were there together, and I was like,
Yeah.
we were, oh, so this big swaths of it are just gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have a bunch of thesis stuff to get into. And I don't want to wrap up talking about it after 15 minutes. I had hoped that our friend Melissa Dimitris was going to be able to join us, and she's just swamped with work, and we couldn't make the scheduling work out. But I know that she has, a lot of thoughts about this film. It's sort of her genre that she's really into right now. This sort of, female-driven coming of age. I think she's working on a feature. I know that she's working on a feature that sort of deals with these subjects. So that would have been cool. I have not seen Barbie yet. I'm eager to see other stuff that Greta Gerwig has directed, because clearly this is a woman that knows what she's doing.
Yeah. And
I thought it was terrific.
It's listed as her partner, so I guess they're not married, but her partner is Noah Baumbach.
Yeah.
Who's also, done some Squid and the
I
Whale.
think he did the Squid and the Whale, right? I think particularly that movie strikes me in a lot of, I loved it because it was funny, it was painful, but it also felt like meticulously detailed and true in those details. So while there are parts of it that are painted with sort of broad strokes, it never loses the sort of fine brushwork of all of these little moments that just feel mercurial and contradictory and dialectical and true. That movie really resonated with me too, because that central metaphor of the squid and the whale, that exhibit. Have you ever been to the Museum of Natural History? So they have these great dioramas. We do see a scene in that movie where he goes, he talks about going to there's this sort of ocean, whole wing of it that's, oceanic life. And there's a giant hall that has a blue whale. It has a life-sized model of a blue whale that's suspended in the space from wires. So you walk in and you're face to face with this giant replica of a blue whale. And just the sheer scope of it is unbelievable. I think it's a blue whale. It might be a baleen whale. I think it's a blue whale. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's a huge whale. And you go down, and then as all the exhibits and stuff are around the outside of the room, but you can kind of cross through the middle of the room, and there's a screening thing below it. So there's this enormous thing above you, as it would be in the ocean. But it's what that museum does so effectively is let you feel proximity to these very lifelike replicas of animals. And over in one dark corner, in the far corner of the room, is this squid and whale exhibit. I guess that's sperm whale. Those are the ones that eat squid. And it is a sperm whale battling a giant squid, trying to eat it. And there's just something about, it's dimly lit, like it'd be really deep in the water, and something about the distance from it. There's no glass, right? Because it's just a diorama. It's just a man-made thing. So it's open, and you feel like you could reach in there. If you could reach far enough, it touches right there. But the scale of those things, it's terrifying. When I was a little kid, I was afraid to get close to it. And that's what the character describes in that movie. He was afraid to go look at it. And at the end, we're talking about that movie. At the end, he goes to that exhibit, and I just thought, there's just something so true in that specificity that I just feel like both of these filmmakers must have taken careful notes when they were kids, and then been able to refer back to or have remarkable memories for the feelings and the, just all the different kaleidoscopic things that were going on at that time in our lives with our parents and with our peers and with our first loves. I think it's one of the reasons why coming of age as a genre is so rich. We've done a bunch of movies that are really coming of age.
Mm-hmm. Well, and obviously everybody goes through it, if you make it
Yeah.
to adulthood. So we can
Yeah, and
all
everybody has
relate
widely
in one way
different.
or another.
Yeah, we all have widely different experiences, but there are some sort of universal human experiences that we associate with that time that I think. And also, as we get older, I think there's a part of me sometimes that thinks, I wonder if this or that had been different, if I would feel like I'm a different person, right? I wonder how much of that stuff has shaped the person that I am today. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think she really does a good job of, when you're a teenager, it's such a weird time because you're almost an adult, but you're not exactly. And you live with your parents. And so you have to follow your parents' rules. But, by the time you're a senior in high school, you have your own ideas and ways of looking at the world and all that. And I think she does a really great job presenting all of that.
And you sort of assume seeing a movie about a character who doesn't eye roll her way through Catholic school, but there's a degree of just like, school, nuns, pageantry. That when she gets to New York, you sort of what I expect as a viewer is, I'm done with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when she's in New York and feeling lonely and feeling, in it like, a fish out of water in this new place, she goes to church,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that it's like, well, it's more complicated than that. The church is a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really get into that's like an important aspect of the film, but it doesn't, this is not some sort of a diatribe or an exploration of the Catholic Church in an overt way, right?
No.
I just love that everything is multifaceted. And then it doesn't spend time blah 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 dissecting it. It lets us experience it with the characters. Lady Bird as a character is clearly a creative person.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't do particularly well in school. And manages to get a scholarship to NYU. At first, we think that the mother doesn't think that she can hack it, but it becomes clear that the mother just doesn't want her to go that far away.
Mm-hmm. She wants her to go to UC Davis, which is the
right there,
the nearby school.
Yeah, and Lady Bird, especially early on in the movie, is an abrasive character, like clearly the protagonist of this film. But like says what you should go to UC Davis, and Lady Bird says something like bitingly disparaging. I don't remember the exact, something like, I'm not going to go to that loser community college or whatever. And her dad is like, your aunt went there and she's doing great. It's like got a great education. It's a good thing. And again, it's a little hard to like Lady Bird sometimes, I think, particularly early in the movie, because like a typical teenager, everything is, a little pushed too hard, a little overdone.
There's one scene where she gets in trouble because they have a woman come to the school to talk to them about abortion, and it's like an anti-abortion thing, and she pushes back on that, and does she get suspended? They suspend her for like a few days, right?
Yeah, I don't remember, honestly. It's been I didn't rewatch it. It's been a week or more since I saw this, so I don't remember specifically, but I do remember the conversation that she had with that. I guess it's the principal of the school, I'm presuming, is that woman.
I'm not sure.
The nun that
she was.
And she plays a prank on that woman just married to Jesus or whatever. They dress at the back of her car. And they laugh about it later. It's a pretty harmless prank, and And the nun has a good sense of humor about it. She's like, "Oh, I knew that was you. I don't
Hmm.
know any of the other students here who would have come up with that." There's
Hmm.
almost love. There's almost an endearment. Yeah, it's just a really human, really well drawn movie, and I think her experience by the letter of it doesn't overlap much with mine. Like, you went to a Catholic school, I did not. The most I can say is I was a teenager, and I did go, I did go to high school, and I did have arguments with my parents and stuff. And so on paper, you wouldn't necessarily think that there was a lot that I could relate to in this, but you really step right into Lady Bird's shoes with her, and don't even root for your protagonist the whole time. Sometimes you're
No.
like, you're just being mean right now,
Yeah.
Lady Bird.
And she's not a bad kid, she
No.
just kind of rebels and,
Yeah, she's a typical kid. Yeah.
and she's also somewhat typical in that, like you said, she's not a great student. And, there are people like that who just, you know, so much, like we've talked about, so much of the time movies present high school as the greatest time of people's lives. And there are people who are that way. But there are also kids that don't particularly do well in school for whatever reasons. And it's not that they aren't smart. She's obviously very bright, but she just doesn't like school very much. And,
Right.
and there are plenty of people like, there are the people who peak in high school, and that's, they were the stereotypical, the head cheerleader or the quarterback of the football team or whatever, and kind of spend the rest of their life never matching up to that. And then there are the people that don't do that well in school, and then they go on and do really great things. They do well in college, or they do well after they get out of school, so which I don't think is necessarily presented that much in movies.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's this enormous pressure in cinema to sell someone easily digestible story that makes life feel kind of binary. Like, it's either a
Yeah.
happy ending or it's a comedy or a tragedy, right?
Now I do think, and I think, you see this with Lady Bird. One of the things that's terrible about adolescence is, because of all the hormones or whatever, that at the time everything does feel like it's the most important thing in the world, and you don't understand until you're later in life how unimportant a lot of these things are. But when you're a kid and you're going through it and you can't see anything else,
Yeah.
these things do, whatever the person that you're dating or the class that you're taking or whatever, it seems like there's, like with her, to get into an East Coast college seemed like the most important thing in the world to her. And, we don't see what the rest of her life is like. It's not like we get scenes showing that. But if she'd just gone to UC Davis, like, what was it you said, her aunt, would things have, and it's, a lot of the other kids that she's friends with, that's their plan, is to go there.
Yeah.
Or go there for a while and transfer somewhere else. So,
Well, and the other surprise is that, for everything she says and everything she indicates is that she just can't wait to get out of there.
mm-hmm.
But before she goes, she's sitting in the, I presume it's the principal. It might be her counselor or something, but the nun.
Yeah, I kind of
who
thought
has
she was a
taken
counselor, but I don't know.
such a shine to her, has read her college application essay, and she's written about growing up in Sacramento. And she's like, you've written
Mm-hmm.
with such love about Sacramento, and that's a surprise in the film.
Yeah.
And I think even Lady Bird is a little surprised that came through in her essay.
Yeah.
The woman, it's another refreshing thing, is the woman really seems to see this kid.
Mm-hmm.
And genuinely care about this kid. And that's always nice to see, because we see a lot of bad teachers and teachers who didn't think it was going to turn out this way and take it out on the kids and all that stuff. And those people exist.
I had an art teacher. So we went to the same junior high school and same high school. In junior high school, and I almost majored in art. I didn't, but uh, I would always take forever on my projects. I would always just get them done like right after because I was sort of a perfectionist about it. And this teacher said to me, I hope you don't go to college because in college they're going to, you're going to have these deadlines and things. And it's like, that sort of motivated me as a kid. We're sort of like, well, I'll show her, I was going to go to college.
Yeah.
But it's like, imagine saying that to a kid. It didn't like destroy me or anything, but there
Yeah.
would be kids that would just be like, wow, maybe I'm not college material or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I sort of laughed about it a little bit, but it was a really mean thing to say.
I had a guidance counselor meeting and remember thinking as a 17-year-old or whatever I was at the time, this person was like, I'm not sure you'll be able to get into some of these places that you want to go. And I'm like, is it your job to discourage kids? So I apply and I don't get in. Like,
and that's the exact same thing that happens in the movie.
You think it's a waste of my time to apply? Like, what?
Yeah.
This is your job. You're supposed to inspire,
yeah.
I would think. I mean, sure.
Yeah.
Frame of reference and everything else, but just be like, aim low, kid.
Yeah.
I stopped going to see her. She's like, we should meet again. I'm like, I think we're good. I mean, I think, I'm like, I told you what I want, and you think I don't think you're able to do that, and I'll take it from here, lady.
Yeah. Yeah.
Noted that you've hurt my feelings, right? Yeah. Consider me discouraged. I'm going to try and claw my way back up and go for it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But that's basically what happens in the movie. Everybody tells her,
yeah.
And I think the guidance counselor says,
yeah.
I don't think you should apply to these schools,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I never knew that. I never knew that story.
And apparently it's quite I mean, you see it come up again and again in these coming of age movies, and you're like, is this happening everywhere? I found maybe it so absurd in my case. I was like, this is your job. Like,
I don't know if guidance counselors, if there's some kind of requirement or something that they have to, like, the kids have to get into, you know what I mean? Or it's like,
whatever you do,
I've got to get a certain number of kids accepted or something.
You're going to be meeting with a lot of kids with a lot of hopes and dreams. Whatever you do not encourage them.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, so I mean, you started by saying you would recommend it, I presume.
Yeah, I thought it was great. A couple of little, so this was nominated for like 5 Academy Awards. I don't think it won anything, but we talk about this a lot, how you don't see a lot of this type of movie anymore get into and I mean, this was only 2017, but it cost $10 million and it made $79 million.
Wow.
Which is a real success for something. And, I'm sure put her on the map. Greta Gerwig, I'm talking about, is in terms of a director. And then she goes on and makes $1 billion movie.
Yeah.
But also Saoirse Ronan.
Yes.
This certainly helped to propel her into stardom, I think. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend it. Definitely people, it has that tone of something like Squid and the Whale. If that's a movie that you're familiar with and have seen, it's kind of a similar tone.
Yeah, and the vibe is a little different because it's Sacramento and not Brooklyn. And like Squid and the Whale,
those movies are a little darker than this.
It's quirky without being Wes Anderson quirky.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that bespoke sort of precious feel to it. It feels real. But there's enough poignancy to it that it doesn't feel, it's also not one of these runaway comedies, these rollicking, bonkers coming of age.
Yeah.
They're not all sex comedies, but you get the idea. There's broad.
Funny dialogue in this, but it's very real.
Yeah.
Feeling.
They're driving along in the car, and she's having in the beginning, and she's having this is how we get introduced to her. She's having an argument with her mother, and she gets to the point where she just had enough of listening to her mother, and they're just zooming down the highway. She just opens the door and jumps out of the car.
Jumps out, yeah, breaks her arm.
There's the movie. She's got this pink cast.
Yeah,
it's how you meet Lady Bird. She's the kind of person that's just like when she's had enough, she just jumps out of the car. And at first I thought, oh, that's clever. It's like a metaphor. Oh no, she really must have jumped out of the car and broke her arm. But that's kind of the character we get to know across the movie. You know what? I'm just gonna do it. You know, I'm just gonna do it, and she does.
Yeah.
So I agree. I highly recommend it as well.
So we haven't recorded in a little while, so maybe we could just kind of briefly talk about other things that what are some things that you've watched lately?
Well, I have started watching, this is a very different genre and vibe. You recommended on Max, there's an animated show called Scavenger's Reign that I started watching on your recommendation, and I'm maybe 6 episodes into it.
Oh, cool.
I just think it's great.
I've just watched the first, but yeah, I would like to. Is it 10 or 12 episodes, something like that?
I haven't even looked. I've just been sort of binging it. And when we get off of here, I will probably get the kids started for bed, and I will binge 2 or 3 more episodes of it tonight. Like it's
nice. I definitely thought you would be into it based on, what I saw of it.
Yeah.
It's beautifully animated. I mean,
it's beautifully animated, and it strikes this tone. There's a feature film called Annihilation. Did we do Annihilation on this show?
I don't
feel like we did. It would be an interesting one to do. Where there's this sort of, it's horror, but it's also there's something really beautiful. It's a sort of biological evolution and in weird and sometimes beautiful and sometimes horrifying ways. And this is a story about people who are sort of marooned. Their ship explodes and they end up crash landing on this alien planet, and it is rife with life. And there's all different kinds of crazy interactions that the life forms have, and they're just trying to survive, basically. And the planet is beautiful, but the planet is also dangerous. And
it's so creative. In terms of, now I've just watched the first episode, so I haven't seen it nearly as much as you have, but it's so creative how just all the different creatures that they come up with that are so alien.
Yeah.
And they're all really unique, and it's a cool show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very well done.
And it's sort of, the place becomes a sort of a metaphor where people start discovering aspects of themselves, right? In this crazy circumstance, this character has this experience, and it changes them or makes them more themselves in some way. I really thought it was interesting. And I finally caught up with The Crown. So they're going to release another.
You guys watching that together?
No, interestingly, Rachel loves British television. She loves all of the detective shows, and she has no interest in the royal family. And I don't particularly either, except a friend of mine was like, it's really good. You should check it out. And, I watched an episode of it, and I was like, that was good. And then I watched another, and sooner than later, I was hooked. I came to it very late. I started watching.
Yeah, it's been
a couple of months ago.
I watched the first. How many seasons is it now? Because I watched the first 1 or 2 seasons.
I think they're halfway through the 6th season right now, and later this month they're going to release the second half of the 6th season.
Yeah, I watched the first couple. I started so with series that kind of like books for me. A lot of times I'll have more than one book going at a time, and I kind of do the same thing with series. I started there's a new one on Hulu that maybe you and Rachel could watch together. It's called A Murder at the End of the World. I don't know if you've seen any preview or anything, but it has kind of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo vibes, although this isn't kind of those. I don't know if have you seen any of those movies?
No.
Oh,
I haven't read
they're
the books
good.
either.
Okay, they're really good. They're kind of hardcore, where this doesn't seem to be this so far, but it's about this young woman who has written um a true crime novel, and she gets contacted by, so there's this tech billionaire guy who I forget what the actor's name is who plays him, British actor. But anyway, she gets contacted to go to this retreat that he's having, and it's like 8 or 10 people, and he flies them to Iceland, and it's basically he's assembled these 8 or 10 people from different industries, or she's not from an industry, she's a writer, but that he thinks that are people who are super smart and can change the world in some way or whatever. I've only watched the first episode of it, but what I've seen so far, it's really good. And it's a murder at the end of the world, so there's going to be presumably it's going to be a murder mystery. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be sort of a Agatha Christie 10 Little Indians kind of a thing where
It
people are
feels
getting
like that
murdered, or
already. It's like you
but
assembled this group of remarkable people and you're isolated. And
but beautifully shot, and the acting is really good. The girl, I don't know off the top of my head, I don't know what her name is. She reminds me a lot of Kristen Stewart. She kind of looks like her, and that sort of quirky. She's really introverted and kind of awkward, and she's around this. She's not rich by any means. She's just written this one book that's gotten a lot of acclaim, but a lot of the other people are super wealthy, CEOs or whatever, and she feels, you can tell she kind of feels awkward with these people. But and it might be, I don't know if Rachel likes that kind of thing, like mystery. It's not British, but kind of mystery thriller-ish
yeah, we'll check it
things.
out.
But there hasn't been any like violence or anything in it, so but yeah, what I've seen so far, I think it's really, really good. So, and it's a nice winter time, because they're in Iceland, and so it's very snowy and cold, so very, almost like a foreign planet or something. So yeah, very cool.
There's a new Studio Ghibli Miyazaki
it was
movie
the
out.
#1 movie this week.
I just watched the trailer for it. I mean, obviously it looks good. Every movie that guy in that studio makes looks good. Obviously, they're not all the best that they put out. Everybody's got their own favorites, but the reviews on this one are just, even by Miyazaki standards, the one quote from one reviewer was like, "This is Miyazaki's magnum opus."
Wow,
Like,
that's saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this career of filmmaking, this is the one. This is the big one, and you're like, "This is the big one." Like,
Yeah,
I guess I have to see it. I mean,
yeah. There's also, I don't know if you've seen, it's kind of interesting because I think they said it's the first time ever that there have been 2 foreign films in the top 10 in the box office of the United States at once. But there's a new Japanese Godzilla movie called Godzilla Plus One, and everything that I've seen on
goes out to a fancy
I
party.
don't know.
So it goes to a
I don't know.
wedding, and
Yeah, I
to
don't
bring
know
a
why
guest.
I don't know why it's called Godzilla Plus One, but it's Godzilla, and it's in Japan right after World War II, so it's sort of like them rebuilding from World War II. And I have not seen anybody online who has seen it who didn't just rave about it and say like it's fantastic. Yeah,
a Godzilla movie.
A Godzilla movie. Yeah, and it's
Because I don't think I've ever seen one I liked.
Let me see. I'm gonna look here really quickly because I think
remarkable.
But like people are saying like it's the budget is like 15 million, and people are like the effects are as good as in a $200 million,
How?
I'm sorry, it's Godzilla -1. So
well, that's
my
forget
fault.
it. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't want to have anything to do with it.
On Rotten Tomatoes, with 111 critic reviews, it has a 97% rating, and with
Unbelievable.
2,500 audience reviews, has a 98% rating.
Well, I'm going to
Um,
definitely watch the trailer for that because
yeah,
that's crazy town.
yeah, and like I say, people are like, see it in the theater because like it's just so well done. Yeah, like I say, I have not seen anybody say like, it was okay or I didn't like it. It's just everybody I've seen online. It has an 8.5 with 13,000 reviews on IMDb. 8.5.
That's just so. Because if you go, hey, there's that new Godzilla movie, I'd be like, pass. I'm just
Because
not interested in kaiju. I'm
the
not. It's
American
not.
ones are terrible.
Oh, they're
Um,
horrible.
you know, uh, so yeah, I'm intrigued. I mean, I don't know that I'll get to the theater for that, but I'm intrigued for it. So,
And we are going to see each other in person around Xmas time, and we should watch something together.
yeah, absolutely.
We've
That would
talked
be
about a couple
fantastic.
things, but
And what about for next time? Do you have any thoughts?
well, I don't know that I have any thoughts. Do you?
I went through just randomly before we got on tonight and just sort of went on Max and Prime just to see like what stuff there is that maybe would be kind of interesting.
Kind of kicking around.
If you felt like doing a classic, the original, which I haven't seen in a long, long time, the original James Cameron Aliens is on Max. I don't know how long it's been since you've seen that.
Many a year.
That might be kind of fun. Also, one that I've always wanted to see that's also on Max. I think it's the first Coen Brothers movie, Blood Simple. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, that's been a while too.
I've never seen it. And on Prime,
It's a slow burn, if I remember correctly.
it probably is. Yeah. On Prime, there are some. So there are a lot of these. I've been kind of going back and watching these sort of like adult dramas that maybe we were a little too young in the 80s or early 90s to really appreciate. But one that popped up was Big Easy with Dennis Quaid, Alan Barkin, and Ned Beatty. That's from 1987. Have you ever seen that one?
Probably close to when it came out, not since
I've
then.
I've never seen it. The Two Jakes, the Chinatown sequel. Did you ever see that one?
Nope.
Never seen it.
Never even heard of it. Didn't know there was a sequel to Chinatown.
Yeah, so they made a sequel to Chinatown, and Jack Nicholson directed it.
I think it's telling that I have never heard of it.
I think it was viewed as not great. I've never seen this.
Sir.
This might surprise you. I've never seen Clue, the original Clue.
Oh.
I've never seen. We talked about Dead Again a little bit, the Kenneth Branagh movie.
Yeah,
and then also another one that I think is our favorite director, Sicario. Have you ever seen Sicario?
I have. Yes,
I've not seen that one either. So anyway, those are just a few that I saw that we wouldn't have to rent, that are just that Max and Prime were feeding to
Max
me,
Prime.
So
ding bang dong.
We can think about it off. There might be something else that.
Yeah, none of those things are lighting a fire of excitement in my stomach, but I'm not saying no to any of them. I want to mull it over a little bit.
And we did talk about, maybe we'll leave this as a surprise, but we did talk about a Christmas one that we could watch when we get together.
Yes.
So
well, we can do that. We can do a Christmas fun thing live.
That'll be when we see each other, but
we can either, I don't know that we do a recording while we watch again. I mean, that was fun, but I don't know.
I think we can just talk about it after.
Anybody has listened or watched it, we could just watch it together and then record.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely.
While it's fresh off the presses. Okie doke, Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. That's our handle. You can send us a message. You can like and subscribe. You could make a suggestion.
Suggest movies, yeah.
Exactly.
Sometimes we have a hard time figuring out what we're going to watch.
And as always, or perhaps this is your first time. Either way, thanks for listening and joining us. We're on YouTube. We're on your favorite podcast thing. And I'm Chris and he's Chris. And that's us. I'm Chris and Chris. And we talk about movies.
It'd be great if we got to the end of like, it's Chris and Chris Talk Movies. I'm Steve and he's Bill.
And Barry.
And Barry.
We just thought it was better to be confusing. Yeah, so we're not sure what we're going to do for next time, but we're going to do something fun, and we hope that you will join us then as well. And unless you have anything else you'd like to add right here at the end,
I think that's all.
Chris and I will talk to you all next week, baby. Bye.
Bye-bye.